Well, I can see why people get addicted to this this YouTube stuff. I think I'll make another video. I just noticed in the previous one it looks like I've got a hideous growth here, but it's actually a mark or a shadow or something. It's peculiar lighting. I don't have a bulbous growth. But anyway, regardless of my bulbous growth situation, I thought I might have a quick word about the Rendlesham forest incident. Now this is quite an interesting one. A lot of this UFO stuff can be just written off as just absolute rubbish, but the Rendlesham forest incident is quite interesting in that it involved United States Air Force personnel. And even the deputy base commander, Colonel Holt, who went out into the forest and with some of the guys and had a look at it. Anyway, the story goes that back in 1980, I think it was around Christmas time, Boxing Day, that's that sort of time of the year, between I think it was Woodbridge and Bentwaters, between the two Air Force bases in East Anglia, Woodbridge and what did I just say? Bentwaters? Yeah, Woodbridge and Bentwaters, I think it was. I haven't read about this stuff for a very long time, so this is just me recalling thoughts from years back. The story goes that around Christmas time there was a lot of bright lights in the trees just beyond the rear gate, I think it was, of Woodbridge Air Force Base. And some NCOs went out there and had a look around, and they were trying to find. They thought an aircraft had crashed because there was lots of strange lights in the trees, and they didn't really know what it was, and they went out to investigate. And now I can't remember, because it's a while since I read about this, whether it was on the first occasion or the second occasion. This guy, Sergeant Peniston, said that he actually saw a structured vehicle, and he touched it and that it was warm, and he noted what was the symbols written on the side. And later on he recalled that subconsciously that he'd written down a lot of stuff in binary, and he'd had this binary decoded, and it linked somehow to another conspiracy theory. And I thought, this is just absolute rubbish, you know. No one else saw Peniston touch the craft. No one else saw a structured craft. Everyone else just saw lights. It was only Peniston that saw the structured craft, from my recollection. And I think it was on the second night. So anyway, the lights went away. A couple of nights later, or the following night, they came back. And the deputy base commander, Colonel Holt, went with the other Air Force guys out into the forest to try and find what the source of these lights were. Now, it's a very interesting doco. It's probably on YouTube, about the Rendlesham forest incident. And although the video is a reconstruction, the audio track is the actual live recording from that evening, supposedly. And what these Air Force personnel saw really freaked them out. Now, a rather well-known British ufologist has said, there was the Orford Ness lighthouse. You can see the light from the Orford Ness lighthouse shining through the trees. And I thought, well, I think it would bother me that United States Air Force personnel in charge of nuclear weapons and all this sort of stuff would mistake a lighthouse for something flying around in the trees. Doesn't sound terribly likely. Got to bear in mind that they would have been on the base presumably for many nights before those two nights, and they would be used to seeing how the lighthouse looked through the trees, even if it was visible at all. Lighthouses don't tend to pull themselves out of the ground and run around in a forest, or move around generally. So I think it's unlikely that it was the Orford Ness lighthouse. Sadly for most of you, I also think it's unlikely that it was an alien spacecraft, because if it was an alien spacecraft, why would it hover around in the trees or above the trees between a couple of Air Force bases? Why wouldn't it go to the Air Force bases? I mean, alien technology is not going to be able to be brought down by us. So, you know, if you've got a species that can travel around the galaxy on a willy-nilly basis, there's probably a larger ship in orbit, sends down a little probe to have a look around. There'd be absolutely no point in having the little probe looking around in the forest. Why would you send a probe to investigate twigs and squirrels? You know, you would send it to the weapons storage area on the Air Force Base, maybe look at the energy density in the nuclear weapons. Could be interesting. An alien species is not going to be interested in the aircraft, you know, because again, if you can fly around the galaxy on a willy-nilly basis, you're not going to be interested in aircraft that are pushed through the air by burning paraffin. I mean, it's just antique rubbish, really. So what might it have been? So I don't think it was a lighthouse. I don't think it was an alien spacecraft. I think what it may have been, and what I think would be, I think is a better candidate, is there's a very high power transmitting station at Orford Ness. Now, Orford Ness has got the big high power transmitting stations owned by the government. It was used by the military. There's also at Orford Ness, there's the atomic weapons testing facility there. Goodness knows what they might have been doing there with that. If you Google the Orford Ness PAGODAS, you can see about the sort of stuff that they used to do over there with regard to nuclear weapons. If you Google Orford Ness transmitting station, you can see that they've got some fairly significant transmitters there, 600,000 watts, 500,000 watts. And you've got to bear in mind too that if you've got a 600,000 watt or 600 kilowatt AM transmitter, the amount of power, in peak power in the signal, when you actually apply the information to that signal, the actual to the modulation to it, would be 4 times that. So you could say 2.4 megawatts of high frequency energy. And I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that there might have been a fault at the transmitting station that night, and it caused plasma to form around the forest, and that's what they were seeing. They might have had some sort of peculiar effect going on with that. That transmitting station was actually set up, I think, back in the 60s by the American military, and at the time it was a top secret over the horizon HF radar project called Cobra Mist, if you're English, and it never worked properly apparently. But since they shut down the Cobra Mist project, it was handed over to the military. Used it for other applications, and I think it was used by the BBC for MF broadcasting for some time. And last year it was actually sold to a private company called, surprisingly enough, Cobra Mist Limited. I wonder what they're up to. But anyway, back in the 80s, or back in 1980, you got this huge transmitter installation not too far from where they saw these lights, and I think that it's more likely to be something like that. Would be my prime candidate. And I think if I was going to investigate this seriously, I'd try and see if I could get hold of the logs for the transmitting station for that night to see if they had some problems there. Or if the military, Christmas is a pretty unusual time though, isn't it, for the military to be conducting experiments, but who knows? Who knows what the military get up to? I don't think they do half the time. HF over the horizon radar, a lot of power. The Russians actually used something similar. A bit later on in the 70s and 80s, they got theirs to work properly. I don't think it was actually called the Russian woodpecker, and that used. I think the West calculated that the effective radiated power from the Russian woodpecker was something like 10 million watts. And if you're bored, Google the Russian woodpecker or Duga 3, D-U-G-A 3. And you'll see some video on YouTube. that will show you this high-power Russian over-the-horizon radar station. It was called the Woodpecker. I'm going off at a tangent here, actually, but it'll only take a couple of minutes. The Russian Woodpecker was called the Woodpecker because this huge signal was heard all over the planet. It just came on, and it was a signal that was pulsed at 10 hertz, and it would move up the band. So it would appear on a frequency or a block of frequencies, and then it would jump up the band and it would do the same thing again. And it used to pulse at 10 hertz, so it used to sound like a woodpecker tapping a tree. So it'd be da 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 da, and then it would jump up the band, da 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 da, and it was a massive signal. And the Americans, or some of these American experts, suggested that as it was pulsing at 10 hertz, very low frequency electromagnetic radiation apparently affects the brain in a certain way. And they thought it was some sort of pacifying. The idea was that it was some sort of mind control, or it was some sort of mental pacifying type weapon that the Russians were using on the Americans and on the West, because it was a huge signal in Europe and in the UK as well. And of course, it didn't occur to them that these experts that the Russian woodpecker would also be a massive signal in Russia. So whatever it was doing to the American people, it would be doing to the Russian people as well. So there are some seriously dumb experts out there. Of course, the purpose of it was over-the-horizon radar to detect American missile launches that might be heading their way over the pole, or I can't remember now. Although you could hear the signal in Europe, I don't know whether it actually scanned across the UK, because I don't think the UK actually had any intercontinental ballistic missiles installed there. Nuclear armed Air Force bases, yes, for aircraft, but I don't think they actually had ICBMs there. Anyway, I'm going off at a tangent here, sorry about that. So getting back to the Rendlesham Forest incident. So if you Google Orford Ness and Cobra Mist and the Russian woodpecker, it'll give you an idea of over the horizon HF radar, the sort of equipment that's involved, the sort of power levels that are involved, and I think that's probably the number one candidate. I'd certainly dismiss anything Sergeant Penniston had to say. He's changed his story over the years. Colonel Holt said he never saw him touch the craft. I'm pretty sure that no one else saw a structured vehicle. It was only a case of lights in the trees, changing colours and all this sort of stuff, and that was all there was to it. Whatever it was, seriously freaked him out. So, as I say, you can listen to that the actual sound recording that was recorded when they went to look at it. And they play that over a visual reconstruction, and I'm fairly sure that documentary is on YouTube, so if you're interested, check that out. It's certainly, whatever it was, freaked them out. I honestly can't believe it was a lighthouse, and I honestly can't believe it was an alien spacecraft. Just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mean, if I was going to dispatch a starship to another part of the galaxy that was going to send probes out, I wouldn't have them floating around in forests looking at twigs and squirrels. It's just the occasional owl. It just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. So I'd put a line through the alien spacecraft. I'd put a line through the Orford Ness lighthouse, and I would look at that transmitting station. That would be my number one suspect. How are we doing? Is that 13 minutes? Okay. Oh, well, 13 minutes, that's probably good enough. But Britain's Roswell, the Rendlesham Forest incident. Interesting, but I think sadly it's another one that, as far as aliens are concerned, I think can be dropped in the bin. Sorry guys, but I think that's the case. Of course, I could be wrong. I know I can hear you all screaming, "Don't be ridiculous!" But it does happen. It has been known. I have been wrong in the past. Difficult as that is to believe. All right, well, have fun, and maybe I'll do another video. So I've done the Philadelphia experiment. I've done Tunguska. I've done Roswell. I've done the Rendlesham Forest incident. What else is there? Maybe maybe you could suggest something, and might jog my memory. It might be something that I've looked at, because I used to be really into all this stuff years ago, and I sort of read these books, and I used to go on sky watches, and when I lived in the UK, I used to go to Warminster on the sky watches, you know, because there was the Warminster thing. You can Google that. The Warminster Mystery was a book written by a guy called Arthur Shuttleworth, but I think that was a load of rubbish as well. I think Shuttleworth made that up, to be perfectly honest. But I never ever saw anything down there. I was on Cradle Hill. It was a very famous place for looking for UFOs back in the 70s, and there was people up there all night with deck chairs, you know, and just looking at the sky, and people have said, oh, you know, have you seen this, and you see it, and I was on the same hill on the same night, and I never saw anything, you know. And people would get very excited about, I think it was Lord Hill on the other side of the town, or it might have been away from the town, but oh, look at those white lights, then red, then white, then red. And it's actually cars going over the crest of a hill. You know, if you go up there in the daylight, you can see the crest of the hill. You know, so people that want to see UFOs, I think a lot of the time see UFOs. If you're there to actually investigate and try and find out if there's anything to it, so you're open-minded, but you are at the same time critical, you can see that there's a down-to-earth explanation for this stuff most of the time. All right, well, maybe I'll think of something else I can do a video on. And as I say, if you've got any ideas, drop us a suggestion in the comments below. Thanks for watching.